reality is we simply do not have water. Like, I think ESG and DEI are just frameworks of thinking about how your business should operate, and they're frameworks very much grounded in reality of human and environmental factors. And so if you're going to turn your business away from reality, then your business is...
Today I chat with Sarah Osell, founder and principal consultant of Anim8 Collective. Anim8 Collective is a network of advisors in the sustainability space that consists of fractional experts that offer flexible and scalable plug-and-play solutions. Previously, Sarah grew up working on family-owned farm and orchard businesses, collaborated with numerous startups and Fortune 500 companies, and was named to the Global 50 Women in Sustainability. Sarah is an incredible systems thinker, and we talk about how she helps grow sustainability companies with data-driven strategies, as well as the overall sustainability landscape we're seeing today. This is Earth ABC, featuring Sarah Osell.
Sarah, welcome to the conversation with climate tech founders. Glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're the first guest who calls themselves a fractional growth officer. And as a first, I want to dive into firstly, like, what exactly is a fractional growth officer?
Yeah, so fractional on its own means part-time. I think you're fractional if you are working for a company on retainer for 1 to 2 or even 3 days a week. You're just not working every single day full-time for that company. And then growth officer is someone who is essentially like a hybrid strategist and also execution person between marketing and sales. And your goal is to grow the business. How you do that is agnostic of function.
Gotcha. And so when you're thinking about growing a company, you talked about marketing, sales. How are you going about thinking about the growth through these lenses?
So I actually have some visuals to show, and I'm going to share my screen right now. So this is a systems thinking canvas that I created to help teams think about the business system that they are operating in. Oftentimes, when I talk with founders, they come from an engineering or science background, and they're very focused on the product that they're creating. But when you think about investors, they're investing in the business infrastructure to create value in the market. And so when you are entering a market, you need to think about all of the people. These are called stakeholders who are impacted by the problem that you're solving. Then you're going to think about the innovation itself. I use the example when I teach this by saying, you know, the problem that we're solving is nutrition. We're trying to get people nutrition. And maybe as a founder, you're really passionate about granola bars. But through this research, you discover that, oh, there's been new innovation in freeze drying, and freeze drying actually preserves more nutrition in the actual fruit itself, for example. So maybe through this systems thinking process, like, I love granola bars, don't get me wrong, but the best way to deliver nutrition is actually through another form of that product. So you might be, after doing exercises like this, you might need to be open to pivoting what your product is in order to make the business grow. Then you're going to look at market demand cycles. This might be achieved by looking at trends in what people are searching for example, using Google key term research or what is appearing in the news. Economic factors, political factors. There might be laws or grants. Unfortunately, a lot of those are, something happening right now is a lot of those grants are being cut. So how do you bring money in through other ways, alternative financing? Social factors, how does the market feel about this? Who are influencers? How are you supply and resupply? How are you actually getting your product to market? That might actually change your product, especially when it comes to packaging, for example. Health factors, environmental factors, of course. And then, so that's all looking at like the business from a top-down as a whole perspective. And then from a bottoms-up actual architecture perspective, that's where we have lean or continuous improvement, performance management. And these are all concepts that dive into the people, technology, and processes, and really mapping those. You can see on the left here, All of these little elements of this map represent decision points or actions that the user takes, actions that you as a business take. And when you map these systems, then you can identify the data that you need or the key performance indicators. And when we're getting started, we're often going to look at volume, but over time, to really drive performance and growth, we're going to need to start looking at flow rate through the system, as well as implementing quality checkpoints so that you can deflect people that are not good quality from interacting with your business. For example, like maybe your business has multiple business divisions or multiple products. You want to funnel the right people through the right channels to get them what they need.
So it's kind of like a mix of identifying bottlenecks to also making more data-driven decisions for whatever has like the highest leverage output.
Yeah, kind of like a fusion of user experience design and data science.
Gotcha. You mentioned before that this like systems level thinking, you're trying to think about the different aspects of the business, even when it comes to just marketing, but just overall the business as a whole. But for pivoting, what comes to mind for me is like a lot of early stage startups where they have the luxury to make these pivots without much consequence. So who typically are your clients?
Yeah, so for Fractional Growth Officer services, for example, that's going to be Series A to Series B size companies. These companies are at the point where they have enough funding or revenue to actually hire staff for this. If you look at like, ratios for spending, kind of comes into play at that level. And then at the pre-seed to seed level, that's where I do advisory work. And so that's really just going to be like, let's hire for an audit project, and we'll do this audit project in 1 month. And then maybe even try a campaign to actually test the recommendations. And then I train you and set you off to sea. So yeah, that's, and then within the sustainability space where I'm focusing, the companies that are really accelerating right now are in the electrification space, mobility, agricultural robotics. That's kind of who I'm looking at talking to.
And why do you think those industries like mobility and electrification, why do you think that they're excelling in this sector in particular?
Well, mobility is exciting. We have a kind of embedded consumer movement towards electrification. So on one hand, we've got the EVs, and then on the other hand, we are investing a lot as a country in terms of national resiliency. And so long haul transit and train networks are getting a big boost right now, especially with previous infrastructure funding. We'll see if that holds, but it's beyond the national government at this point. There's actually alliances between states. For example, the entire west coast of the US and Canada has an alliance to electrify the highways. So these are things that are happening outside of the national government level, and they just have embedded momentum. Electrification as well, I started my career with a solar window over 10 years ago. So like this has been happening, and it's going to continue happening. It's not like it's into the private sector now. It's out of the government's hands.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and then robotics and agriculture, we are facing a global food crisis, and it's just a reality that we need to rapidly optimize our agricultural system. And robotics, when we're moving, we know that regenerative practices that work with the environment that we're growing our crops in, they maintain the soil health, they actually like improve the yield of crops, for example. These practices require this performance audit that I just showed. Like you need to do that audit for the system of your farm. And so automation and robotics are just ways to implement these systems in a way that is economical for business. So like a robot can move through a field and pinpoint weeds and pull those weeds out. Or like if you're growing multiple crops, they can identify which crops are ready to harvest and granularly produce revenue for your farm, rather than like the massive tractors, for example, that just harvest an entire field at once. And then you have to sort through everything, and a lot of it goes to waste because it maybe wasn't ready or it's damaged. Yeah.
Gotcha. And when you're doing like these performance audits, like you mentioned, like you're looking at the operations, any initiatives that are going on, how they all interweave with each other. But what challenges have you seen these like sustainability companies facing when integrating like data-driven strategies and or like bringing you on?
Yeah, I actually really recommend the book Bad Data. It talks about how we often we forget the outcomes that we are trying to achieve when we initially approach data systems, and we also often start with volume, as I mentioned. And so I think and also leaders have egos. They feel like we really feel like having 50 salespeople on the ground banging down doors is the best tactic. But the market is actually changing. Most buyers, I think it's like 70 to 80% are making their decision digitally. And so the human salesperson making calls is getting less and less effective. And as leaders, you might say, oh, well, we just need more salespeople. But I think when you look at a systems thinking perspective, the sales, and I actually saw this in my own experience with my own performance audit over the last year, our KPIs for when someone becomes a lead is actually moving up the funnel. People like I'm out on LinkedIn all the time doing the like boots on the ground sales work, but I am getting leads through my LinkedIn contacts. And so and we know that forms on websites even are getting less and less effective. So these traditional tactics are not the high performers anymore. We need to start rethinking where we are measuring success and how we are approaching that. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially the tail end of your kind of view on the, I guess, current landscape of challenges when it comes to these like data-driven strategies is that these leaders got to put their egos aside and basically like keep up with the times and making sure that they're doing the right things that produce the most, I guess, return on their time, basically. Because like you mentioned, the forms on these websites are not working as well as they used to, but people are kind of buying into these, like founders especially, kind of telling their story, their journey, and then selling it themselves.
Yeah, I think that's another point. Like keeping up with the times doesn't mean totally automating everything and turning chatbots and everything. Often when we deploy these chatbots, for example, like they piss people off.
Yeah, it has the reverse effect than what you intended.
Yeah, so I think it's important, like, put your ego aside, sit in the muck and mud of your business, look at reality. Also, listen to your actual customers, get on call with them. Don't be afraid to ask them why they turned you down. Why did they buy you versus others? Take that time to do the customer listening. And that will help you identify where do you still need people or where can you use process automation to eliminate friction in your business interface.
Mm-hmm. And those are a lot of considerations to make. On top of like today's market, especially with like major funds pulling back like ESG commitments, tightening budgets and stuff. So from the things that you've been seeing, what are some pieces of advice for these companies in navigating such, I guess, uncertain waters?
Yeah, I get that DEI and ESG as terms are not trendy right now. And like, that's fine. Use different words. Like, let's upskill our workforce so that they are competent and capable in using AI tools. Let's improve our resiliency against, maybe our factories are in water stressed areas. Let's improve our resiliency and water efficiency because we simply, like, the reality is we simply do not have water. Like, I think ESG and DEI are just frameworks of thinking about how your business should operate, and they're frameworks very much grounded in reality of human and environmental factors. And so if you're going to turn your business away from reality, then your business is not going to last long. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. So with the recent shifts of like a downturn in funding and things like that, what future shifts do you see for the foreseeable future in like the sustainable business landscape? And how do you imagine these companies prepare for the next like 5 years?
Yeah, so I've been doing some research recently. So for example, on the DEI side of things, funding, 40% of companies are moving their DEI funding to like AI, for example. And I do think that while it is valid to address technology trends, this is very much hype based, and these systems have not been designed for efficiency or effectiveness or like strong onboarding or even user experience of the people actually using them. And they're also not like creating training for people to effectively use them. And so I think it's cool to follow the trends, but we're going to see a lot of waste and a lot of misplaced funding in the coming years. And I think that it will be a couple years of downturn. That's just the reality of the market. But I do think we will see a resurgence back. And that resurgence will be hybrid. I was actually reading recently, only 11% of hardware startups are hybrid, and that they also have like the data strategy. Any piece of hardware has IoT embedded in it. Like, you are collecting data through the use. You can put observation equipment onto your hardware to observe the environment that your hardware is operating in. And then the even more powerful and valuable aspect of that is what is possible to do with all of that data. So like, it's only 11% of these hardware companies now. And that could be a reason why a lot of these companies actually fail, because it's really expensive to produce hardware. But if you get that data component on top of it, like, that is a system-wide benefit. And I hope that more companies start, like, the next wave that will be accelerating will be majority data hybrid type companies.
Gotcha. And in terms of like these sustainability focused companies, what adjustments need to be made in terms of like their growth strategies in response to this downturn for the next like 3-5 years?
There is validity to doing a word mapping exercise to move away from green terms. Just, you don't want to turn someone off just by the words that you're using when your solution can actually solve the problems that they're looking to solve. For example, I just read about this green aviation fuel, biofuel company in Montana got a 50 million grant approved right now in the Trump administration that's cutting sustainability grants because they eliminated the words about sustainability, and they just talked about how this company is benefiting farmers and agriculture and economics in the state, or in the economic system in the state of Montana. So there are paths forward. It's really hard. Like, an exercise that I can do, for example, with clients is like a quadrant map. Identify all of the features of your product or outcomes, and then map them to most valuable and most unique. And then Deloitte has something called the business value map. And you can also look at like the government priorities, and then align your features with the outcomes a business value map and government priorities. And, you're just not using the word green anymore, or environmentally friendly anymore.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's kind of like you have to dodge some words, and maybe you might require more words to explain what you do, but I guess that's just the reality of things right now. But you seem to really understand like the market, the landscape, how to think about systems and how they interweave with each other, all the dynamic relationships that are coming in and out of the system. So I imagine like I'm a company, probably like a pre-seed, seed stage startup. How do I first get started with working with you, and what does the outcome look like?
Yeah, usually for early stage companies, I start with advising, and either the company is trying to get sales or the company is trying to get investment. And so, and then for investment, they'll have a pitch. For sales, they'll have a pitch. Both of them have a pitch. So I'm going to be working on either of those. And usually I start with like a 4-hour per month project-based advisory. And so that includes like, let's meet, let's talk about what your goals are, then align on like what my action items are for a small amount of time. And I never make introductions without doing a pitch review. And if you're not willing to edit your pitch and update your pitch, oftentimes companies, especially in the early stage, create their investor pitch like they're selling their product. But you're selling your business, not your product. So you're going to structure that pitch differently. So I'm never going to work for you if you're not willing to work with me. And these introductions are usually going to be to people within my network, and I really value quality of connection. And so if I don't have a network that could benefit your business, then I wouldn't take that project on. So it's like I'm very conscious of making sure that what your goals are something that I can achieve, especially because you're on such a tight runway, and like that's also my reputation with my network. So
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like a very common success story, what have you been seeing in terms of these pre-seed and seed stage companies working with you as their growth advisor?
Yeah, I think so. I'm in the United States, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity here in the United States. Most of my clients are actually global, and so they're trying to get visibility in the United States. And so success, for example, my webinar last month, all of the companies, I think, were international. And so we were able to get 100 registrations to see them talk. I've also made introductions to people in my network that have led for other investor connections that have led to like I made 20 intros, 25% of them got actual meetings. Some of those meetings turned to further introductions. So it's definitely a way to like get in the door of the United States. And then within the United States, I've just been around the industrial space from like research and development up to enterprise. And so I have, especially in the advanced manufacturing and robotics space, and I've also led communities. So I've met a lot of the key stakeholders in the system.
So part of your consulting firm, you also have this like collective, so Anim8 Collective. What exactly is that about?
Yeah, so the original name of my business, Anim8 Collective, was inspired by the idea that businesses are stronger as networks. And so I am also starting last fall, I started like really pushing on my network to become members of the collective. And the collective is it's listed on my website. These are referral partners or other consultants that I really believe in. They work in the sustainability space. They're excellent at what they do, but they're not what I do. And so the clients that I work with can these collective partners are readily available. I've already met them. I know them. I know they do great work. So I'm trying to build a system of partners that can really flow with your business as you grow.
Neat. So kind of like a plug and play model of like, okay, I know this like network of like professionals and firms exist. It's like, okay, I know Sarah trusts these folks. They have high quality stuff. Let me tap into them. And it's kind of like vice versa.
Yeah. And it's also a way, like when I think founders have really unique needs, and whatever project we take on could potentially include some of these partners. And so it's a way for me to scale my business without like, I don't have the budget to hire employees full time for this. So we are all flex work type of people for your business.
So in terms of, I guess, next steps, do you have any exciting announcements or calls to actions for the people that are listening in as like a founder of a climate tech company or someone has a company that's focused on sustainability?
Yeah, so for early stage companies, I am finally getting my courses up. I know that I talked about it a lot last year. I think I was hesitant I wanted to actually be like in the business with the people right now. And also we have this AI wave coming on. And so I actually worked myself to integrate AI and automation into a lot of my processes over the last year. I also took a data science course and an AI course for business leaders. And so I'm very ready to build out. So the two audits that I do for like marketing and sales, I am going to run that for my business and turn all of those examples into a course. So you're literally going to see how I'm applying AI to, like reduce the amount of time I spend on a project in half, essentially. And I automate all of my social media. So that course is going to be published in the coming weeks. And exciting. I'm excited to share it with you all.
Awesome. And so if you want to keep up with that, what's the best way to stay connected with you and stay up to date?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or check out my website, anim8co.com, ANIM, the letter 8co.com.
Gotcha. And LinkedIn at Sarah Ocell. Want to get that straight?
Yes, Sarah Ocell. And then I did get the handle Circular Economy. So
there we go.
Yes, early mover.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions for this conversation, but appreciate you being on. I sure did learn a lot about the landscape of kind of sustainability, how that's looking, how that's affecting like growth strategy and things like that. And good to hear about the services that you're offering to these early stage startups.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this interview, follow along on EarthABC's LinkedIn to stay connected and never miss what's going on in climate tech. If you'd like to reach out or you're interested in coming on as a guest, feel free to connect with me, Sean Pack, on LinkedIn. We're always looking for inspiring ventures and founders in the climate space to feature on the show. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time.